Hi there, everyone. Thank you and welcome to the, as Anik would say, Simply Trade Roundup, News Roundup. And a little bit of what's going on today. Me dejaron solo. I'm all alone here. Miss Anik is on holiday, as they say in the EU and other parts of the world. And Mr. Andy had a meeting or so that he needed to attend. And so, um, besides that, I mean, I'm like a chicken with its head cut off because Anik usually is in charge of doing all of this, and she um, tends to be the one that curates all the stories and everything. And without her, well, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen for today, but I had a couple ideas, so I'll go ahead and run the show myself. First of all, I mean, let's talk about the obvious and what's going on. You know, we send our prayers and good wishes over to all the community in Florida that's getting hammered by this hurricane that just happened a few days ago, Hurricane Milton. So you know, just we have a lot of friends and colleagues that work with us and partner with us, and you know, we're hoping everyone's doing well there and staying out of harm. Secondly, that's part of one of the stories that I want to talk about which is obviously the effects of supply chains, and logistics, et cetera, having to do because of the hurricane. Not only Milton, but even before this was Hurricane Helene. Um, and I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that because I've heard people say Helene and other people saying Elaine. And so anyway, so not the earthquake, the hurricane before that. So let's talk about that. And then I guess there's really no clear takeaway other than, you know, let's just hope that there's a recovery here quick enough, only because it is understandable. Gas stations are running out of gas, and there's electricity is getting disrupted. Of course, the roads are a mess, and obviously not much commerce is gonna be moving because of that. And when it does, they probably need to make way for first responders and/or help to get the community back up and running. You know, while the infrastructure starts rebuilding again. And I've been looking at the news, and it's needless to say, it's a mess. You know, it really is. Um, some communities have been affected very badly, and some twice. You know, they're barely cleaning up, and all of a sudden here comes a second wave of disaster. So anyway, so that's one of the obvious news that we're talking about here. Um, for the other news, I thought to myself, I'm gonna do a phone a friend option, and see if I can get somebody on the phone here and help me with the news. Let's see if this works. But I'm gonna try the phone my friend option. We're trying to get this show on the road, and let's see if we can get our friend here on the line. Here, let me see. I'm gonna call Kiko Zuniga. Please answer, Kiko. Here we go.
Hello.
Hey, Kiko, my friend. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Good, good. Hey, so I'm a little bit of in a bind here, and I'm trying to find some news. My
Well,
news.
I don't know if I'm the most newsworthy person, but I'll try.
So I used the phone my friend option here. So my news person is on holiday, as they say in the EU, right? They call it holiday and not
Right.
vacation. So, and Andy is in a meeting. So I said, I'm gonna do the news by myself, but I'm gonna call a friend. So anyway,
Call a friend.
yeah. So how you doing,
Okay.
Kiko?
I'm doing well.
Cool.
So,
You have anything that's hot right now in the news or anything that
well,
we
I
can
mean,
do a
really,
5 minute?
the, the only thing that's going on right now is, of course, CBP is focused on the business resumption after the port strikes,
Sure.
right? And that's really their focus. They're, because anytime you have a strike, you end up with a backlog of stuff that, they say for every day that the port's closed, you have about a 7-day backlog of containers that they have to work through. And so that's kind of what's happening right now. So business resumption is the name of the game on the East Coast. And of course, the hurricane that blew through Florida didn't help, some of these, like I know Cape Canaveral and trying to think of the other port in Tampa area. I mean, they're still struggling to get back up and
But
running.
what about like Savannah for the first one, for Helene, for Helene, or what the heck was the name of that?
Yeah, everything's back. I mean, they're operating again. I mean, it's not they're operational again. I think the labor strike was more of a problem than Helene.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, because the labor strike is what caused containers to back up.
Okay. Well, I mean, what is it that you think or you feel that trade professionals should be looking out and trying to do, I guess, as this is going on?
Yeah, well, I think in large part, everyone needs to be focused on their clients and trying to move cargo as quickly as possible to alleviate the backlog. Of course, there's just so much we can do. A lot of it's going to depend on the ports themselves and how quickly they can get the containers available for us to do our clearance. But
it's not
it's
like,
kind of like all hands on deck. You know,
it's not like you can say, "Oh, let's just send it to California," right?
no,
It's already
yeah,
there. So
it's there. You got to work through the process. So that I was at the other thing that's still going on is the vague and unacceptable descriptions for ACAST. That's still, I mean, I know the deadline was pushed back a little bit,
right.
but that's still a concern for a lot of people because, I mean, that's going to affect a lot of declarations because so many declarations are very vague, and especially in the de minimis world and in the
Right.
working off of e-manifest.
And this is for air cargo, correct?
Air cargo. ACAST is air cargo. Yeah. They can get into a lot of trouble, a lot of held shipments. It's just going to backlog everything there. Like I said, I was in Atlanta on Monday, and that was a big topic for them because Atlanta, of course, it's a big airport hub. And, just there was a lot of uncertainty as to what is a vague description and what isn't.
Right.
And the guidelines still haven't been issued. So everyone's waiting for those guidelines.
Cool. I mean, two good updates there. And anything you want to plug for NCBFAA or NEI?
Well, I mean, the other thing, get ready for continuing education. I know that the accreditors have met and they set up their SOPs. We're just waiting for the NPRM to come out with the effective start date of the continuing education credits. We're hoping it'll be early 2025, but again, that's really up to the government.
Right.
I think as far as the accreditors are concerned, we're all ready to go and move forward. We're just waiting for the timelines to be set and the number of hours to be set for the first triennial report, which is going to be shortened, right? Because instead of 3 years, we only have 2 more years before we have to submit our triennial report. So this NPRM will basically tell you how many points will be needed or how many credit hours will be needed on the first go round, but it'll definitely be not the 36. It'll be 24 in that area, if not a little less.
Right. That makes sense.
So that's really the only other thing that's going on right now, Lalo, and hopefully that helps you.
Awesome. No, of course it does. Thank you. I know our audience will appreciate that, and thank you for hopping in last minute here. And
not a problem.
And we'll catch up. Hopefully, I know for sure you'll catch up with Andy in Canada for the IE Canada conference.
Yeah, and I don't know. I may be going to El Paso for the Southern Border Conference.
Oh yeah.
I don't know yet.
Yeah. So we'll see how that goes. Okay, cool. Well, thanks, Kiko. Thanks for jumping in, and we'll be in touch for sure.
Sounds good, Lalo.
Have a good one.
Take care.
You too. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, that was an update for a few other items that Kiko Zuniga, who's pretty good and active in the with the Brokers Association, with the NCBFAA and the NEI. So thank you very much, Kiko. I'm going to try one more phone a friend. There's a big deal going on here locally in El Paso with one of our largest port of entries, which is the Bridge of the Americas, or how we call it here is BOTA, BOTA. So I do have another friend here local. His name is Jose Quinonez. We've had him on the show before. He is a trade consultant with EP Global Consulting, and I'm going to try to do the same and give him a call. And
Lalo.
Hey,
How
Joe.
are you?
So Joe, thanks for taking my call. I know there's this big deal going on, so I thought I'd call you. I mean, first of all, everyone, Now that we're recording this, Joe, just so you know, just to remind everybody, Joe Quinonez, I've known him for several years, and he's a trade consultant with EP Global Consulting. So, do you want to talk about this new idea? Let's call it an idea because it's not for sure yet, but it's gaining a lot of ground. It looks like where the local government wants to shift all our commercial traffic from the Bridge of the Americas, or as we call it here locally, affectionately call it BOTA, shift that away from that bridge and move it to I don't know. You may know better where or what's going on. What do you have on that?
Well, what I gather is, I mean, basically, the city of El Paso, only has, 4 bridges within its boundaries. You have the 2 downtown bridges,
Right.
which are non-commercial bridges, and then you have the Bridge of the Americas, which is the free trade bridge, as I call it, and then the Isleta port of entry, which is over here close to Zaragoza. And I think the move that they're talking about is to closing down the commercial aspect of the free bridge, the Bridge of the Americas. We call it BOTA also.
Right.
To have all that commercial trade go through Isleta, or the other more exterior or further away bridges, which is the Santa Teresa port of entry and the Tornillo port of entry. Both bridges, if you're talking about the epicenter of El Paso, and I look at the epicenters closer to being BOTA, are easily 15 to 25 miles away from each other. So Santa Teresa, or you're talking Tornillo, are easily, over 15 miles away
Right.
from El Paso. And Isleta, which is in the city of El Paso, is about 10, 12 miles from BOTA.
Right.
So you're thinking about driving to it.
But this is so when you and I were with the group that you formed, you founded that group.
Yeah.
When we were in there, our effort was in economic development by bringing manufacturing to the region, bringing back what El Paso was known for many years ago, right? I mean, that was our niche, our forte. We did a lot of manufacturing here.
Yeah.
But
go ahead.
As you recall, one of the biggest problems that we faced when we were there is they shut off the entry on the side roads into the BOTA because of all the commercial traffic that was going through. Not necessarily the residents, but it impeded some of the residents there in the Chamizal Park and I think even the Connie Coliseum and stuff like that. But so they shut that down, and then recently, I guess not 4 or 5 months ago, they talked about moving or creating a whole commercial yard, I guess, or holding area, I guess, there close to the Coliseum. So that never went through, or what's going on? I mean, I thought that's how they were going to resolve a lot of this.
I thought that there was a concern is trying to get that commercial traffic away from Paisano Delta, the other lateral roads that are more local roads, get that commercial traffic away from it. And they did when they did the upgrades. TxDOT went around and did some upgrades to the I-10 connection to the BOTA port of entry. And when they did that, it basically means that you can't go to Juarez from Paisano Drive. So Paisano, you can't get off it anymore. You have to really come through the Interstate 10 to connect, whether you're going north and south, to connect to the port of entry there at BOTA.
Mm-hmm.
And that was several years ago that they did that. We're talking 3 to 4 years ago. And then now more recently has come the issue through GSA is to do some modernization to that port of entry. And as part of modernization, what I've been reading and following through the media is that they want to do some upgrades to the bridge and make it more pedestrian friendly. Obviously, you still have the pedestrian, what you call the private occupancy vehicles, a big part of it. So congestion is still going to be there. If you get rid of the commercial traffic, and we're talking the large trucks, you still have the congestion from private vehicles. You can't get away from it because it's a free bridge.
I was going to say it's a
And
free
if you
bridge, so
close,
everybody uses it.
it's,
Yeah.
yeah, it's you can't close it to POVs. That's private vehicles like you and I driving across the border, north and south. Um, and so the congestion is still there because it is a free bridge. You don't have to pay a toll.
Right.
Whereas if you go through the other ports of entry in the city of El Paso, in downtown, or in Isleta, you have to pay a toll to cross over,
Right.
either going north or going south. And so that's a big incentive for lots of folks that cross over and use the BOTA as to cross over daily or weekly or monthly, or like me, you only use it a couple of times a year now. And I don't use BOTA because I don't live too close to it. But for folks that are, for the most part, easy to get to, access to from I-10, if you live within 15 miles of BOTA, you're going to use it.
Right. And all the student population and the
Yeah,
workers, the
they
hourly
use it.
workers and everything, they need to use that. I mean, because that's
Right.
I mean the
So
tolls have gone up a lot.
they have. And get this, for exports, for inbound traffic coming that are using that bridge right now, they don't use it as an export bridge. BOTA is not being used. They use a Isleta port of entry, or they use Santa Teresa or Tornillo, because the part of the reason is the staffing with CBP. CBP's always been short staffed, and I don't think that this issue of closing down BOTA for commercial traffic is going to resolve the congestion. They're not really looking at the sustainable answers. And I say sustainable as saying is, what is the real issue? The real issue is the pollution, the congestion that's created by not just the trucks, but by all the private vehicles
Right.
that are using that bridge. And so, our elected leaders need to look at more sustainable answers instead of saying, well, we're going to close out this bridge to commercial traffic and that'll resolve it. Nah, you're just moving that congestion, and you're even creating a bigger issue for the other bridge, which is in the city of El Paso, and that's the Isleta port of entry,
Right.
where that commercial traffic is going to really gather more.
And that's been a mess
So
even recently, right? I mean, because all the infrastructure changes that they've gone through, it's crazy.
Right, and they probably need to look at expanding the bridge more.
Yeah.
When I talk about sustainable, I think I'm looking at more long-term, and I know this can't be done overnight, but you're looking at maybe having another pedestrian and private vehicle bridge in El Paso to lessen the lines there. Lessen the lines, and you say, here's an option.
They've talked about one in Anapra, right?
I've heard about that talk in Anapra, but that's all it's been.
Right.
I mean, let's take for example the Laredo community, Laredo and Nuevo Laredo, Mexico, which is a binational community of half the size of the El Paso area, 2.5 million versus about 1 million in that area of Laredo, in both sides. And you see what they have right now. They have 4 bridges. 2 are just are non-commercial, and the other 2 are commercial. But they're already looking at a 5th bridge. They just recently got the presidential permit this month.
Wow.
To start construction on a 5th bridge, which will be really more focused on commercial. And here we are dealing with, hey, let's close down the bridge to commercial traffic. Well, think about it this way. The commercial traffic is a very big lifeline for communities on both sides of the border. It is what keeps El Paso moving.
Right.
For good or for bad, you might say, well, we don't want we don't want this, we don't want that. But, our elected leaders need to push for more sustainable answers and build more bridge, and also look at technology as a way to do it. It's the saying is, we need to look at technology such as electric vehicles, which is not a short-term answer. You're not going to do that unless the federal government and or the state government incentivize the transportation industry to say, hey, guys, we'll pitch in 30, 40% of your cost for turning over those vehicles from diesel to electric. And you're not going to get that in the short term.
Yeah, totally agree. Well, that's a good update. I mean, I know for sure there's a lot of commercial traffic going through that BOTA, and if anyone that's in the area, they understand and know. I mean, most of, if not the majority of the population of manufacturing facilities in Mexico and Juarez were built around that bridge. Not around literally, you know, because they're a few miles in, but they were built with the intention of them crossing through the BOTA. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, you know, because
Oh
that
yeah,
was yeah,
it, that,
and they're
it,
still there. You know, I know they're modernizing and building in the outskirts of Juarez, but I mean, those are all still there. That's the easiest way to get to the airport. That's
keep in mind, Juarez is a larger community than
than El Paso.
the El
Yeah,
Paso County. So there's almost twice as many people there with vehicles, and so they need to get around, which is needed. But we gotta also look at what is our bread and butter. It's still the maquiladoras and the supply chain on the U.S. side. You have all these binational and multinational logistics companies here that provide thousands of jobs to El Pasoans and thousands of jobs to Mexican nationals. So it's not an easy solution. You know, so I don't think that it's gonna really work well to fix the problem of congestion. And you'll see that. You know, you'll see that if they go through with closing BOTA to commercial traffic, the congestion will still be there because you have the POVs there.
right. And then I guess what does this mean? I guess a good takeaway for all of this, I'm thinking for anybody that's manufacturing or using Ciudad Juarez. I mean, let's face it. I think it's the second largest, um, aside from Laredo, right? That's a border crossing.
Yeah, as far as U.S. Mexico trade, if you look at the El Paso port of entry, not including Santa Teresa, it is the second busiest ports of entry
It is, yeah, and
after Laredo. Yeah,
after Laredo, yeah,
and
and that's a lot. That's significant because a lot of I mean that can disrupt supply chains. I mean we're talking 15, 20 miles to the east or to the west, and but that's still gonna if you set up a warehouse like in around the airport exclusively because of that, then you're pretty much a good 45 minutes to an hour out now. You know, because of you're getting routed to the east or west.
right. I mean, we talk about being a competitive region. I mean, we got to look at it in all aspects, not just having great manufacturing companies here and great multinational distributors, logistics, but to keep them here, you also have to maintain that level of competitiveness by allowing and providing options for the trade to move the goods in and around through the community. You can't just raise barriers and say, okay, well, we solved that, and think that you made your community a competitive region. We and supply chain and the infrastructure that we have here as far as transportation are very big elements when it comes to being competitive. So if you close your region to bridges, you're not helping that out. You've got to look at other ways to do it. So I hope that our future elected leaders will talk to our business community, will talk to experts in transportation, we'll talk to the leaders of these manufacturing plants on what they look at when they want to look at expanding here, and to retain those companies, we need to keep those gateways of communication open all the time.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's a good update. Thanks, Joe. Thanks for jumping in here last minute with me and just
Thank you, Lalo. Bye.
awesome. Anything else you want to say? Any last minute a plug or anything? I'll put your name and contact information for sure on the show notes. But other than that,
Thank
anything
you.
coming up
And
or
no, really, there's coming up the Southern Border Conference. We'll be there in town November 5th, 6th. So you have a mix of customs brokers from all the state of Texas and the Southern Border coming to El Paso, and it'll be held there, I believe, at the Paso Norte Hotel.
right? Beautiful.
So I think they invited me to be part of the panel. I'm excited to be there and give my 2 cents. when we're talking about foreign trade zones, but since that's my area of expertise here.
Thank you, Jose, for joining us here, and looking forward to maybe seeing you there. Well, actually, I'll be at another conference at the same time, but I might send someone from our crew to go and talk to you all there at the conference. So we're looking forward to maybe trying to get that done.
Thank you, Lalo. It's always good to be a part of this Simply Trade podcast, and I look forward to doing it in the future.
Sure. Thank you, Joe. Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye. Okay. Well, so now we're coming to the end of the show, and in the spirit of Miss Anik and her fun facts, I thought I cannot disappoint her, and I gotta make this good. So here we go. Hopefully, y'all like this one. So this story, it involves bugs, espionage, and global trade. So there is a global trade aspect to this. So okay, so because all of Annex and all the different fun facts should have some aspect of global trade. So here we go. In about the 16th century, the Spanish conquistadors, they found and they stumbled on this amazing little treasure in Mexico that wasn't really gold or silver. The reason they came to Mexico was to find gold and silver so they can take back to the home country and, of course, just to enrich their riches, I guess. And so they stumbled on this little insect called a cochinillo, or in Spanish, cochinilla. So these little bugs, if you crush them, they produce a really bright red dye, like incredibly red dye. So like in Britain, the soldiers, they used to be called the redcoats. That bright red coat was due to the dye in these bugs. Okay, so that's how they made the thread and etc. To make the cloth and eventually the uniform for the military in Britain. And thus, the redcoats. But anyway, so let's go back. So Spain, they realized that they had found this really big discovery, and so they created a monopoly. So remember, Spain colonized Mexico. So Mexico was a colony of Spain, and so they pretty much controlled, commerce. And so what they did is that they created a monopoly over the cochinillo. And it turns out that Mexico was pretty much about the only place that you can find this little red bug, the cochinillo. The fun fact about that also is that they breed and live on cactus, so, obviously that's abundant in Mexico as well. So anyway, so they eventually this became the second biggest export, just right behind silver. So the Spanish guarded the secret carefully. And so what they did, they restricted exports of the cochinillo, and they basically said it can only go through two ports out of Mexico. Again, just to manage to control the export. So again, they had an export regulation and whatever that you might call that back in the day. And they even threatened smugglers with death. And in fact, in the story that I read, there was some stories on there about people or smugglers actually, getting killed or put to death because they were trying to smuggle cochineal out of the country. So anyway, and so now here's where the story takes this dramatic turn. Okay, so about in the 18th century, so about 2 centuries later, there's a French botanist, and his name is Nicolas Joseph Thierry de Monneville. I hope I pronounced that correctly, but anyway, so Nick, let's call him Nick. Okay, so he pulled off what was like probably one of the first acts of espionage. What he did is that he disguised himself as a Spanish doctor. He snuck into Mexico and he managed to steal live cochineal insects and their cactus. So basically, this was like quite literally the heist of the century. I mean, 2 centuries. I mean, again, this was world domination, monopoly by the Spaniards for 200 years. I mean, gosh, that's a long time. And so this guy managed to sneak it out, and basically it just broke the monopoly right then and there. He took cactus samples and he took live cochineal, and pretty much because of this, the production of cochineal, or the breeding, let's call it, of the insect, spread to other parts of the world, everywhere from Java to Australia. By the way, I didn't even know there was a location or country, or I don't know what Java is, but anyway. So anyway, from Java to Australia. Right now, the biggest producer of cochineal is actually Peru, is not Mexico. So it's actually whole different region. So anyway, so this had a big impact on international commerce because it just totally shifted everything not back out, but completely away from Mexico. So in other words, those red coats, the red lipstick, food, the color dyes and everything that you see, much of that is still being colored by the product or the byproduct of this cochinillo. That, my friends, it's the rest of the story. And sorry, I did steal that from Paul Harvey, but I just thought this is an interesting story here on the cochinillo and red dye. So Anik, I hope you're not too disappointed and I didn't butcher this. So there you have it. And not to steal from Paul Harvey, but actually I'm going to steal from him. That is the rest of the story on cochinillo, red dye, etc. And this cool story about espionage. So anyway, thank you all for listening. Again, as we like to say, please always subscribe, comment, follow, recommend us to all your friends. And y'all have a good rest of your day. Thank you very much for joining us. Simply Trade is brought to you by the generous contributions of Global Training Center. You can follow the show and GTC on LinkedIn or Twitter and other social networks. Make sure you check out the show notes in the description for a full rundown of today's show with all the important links. Also, make sure that you share this with a friend and subscribe on your favorite streaming platform. We really like hearing from you. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to rate and review wherever you listen to this podcast. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest in the show or would like to sponsor Simply Trade or suggest any topic you would like for us to discuss, please contact us via email at simplytrade@globaltrainingcenter.com, or you can DM us on Twitter at simplytradepod. Thank you again for the privilege of your time. Happy trading. Simply Trade is not a law firm or an advisor. The topics and discussions conducted by Simply Trade hosts and guests should not be considered and is not intended to substitute legal advice. You should seek appropriate counsel for your own situations. These conversations and information are directed towards listeners in the United States for informational, educational, and entertainment purposes only and should not be substituted for legal advice. No listener or viewer of this podcast should act or refrain from acting on the basis of information on this podcast without first seeking legal advice from counsel. Information on this podcast may not be up to date depending on the time of publishing and the time of viewership. The content of this posting is provided as is. No representations are made that the content is error-free. The views expressed in or through this podcast are those of the individual speakers, not those of their respective employers or Global Training Center as a whole. All liability with respect to actions taken or not taken based on the contents of this podcast are hereby expressly disclaimed.